Hey guys, welcome back to part 3 of my second skirmish game using Muskets and Tomahawks rules. Before I show you, first of all, apology about sometimes the time it's taking to do the next session. It's surprising how long it takes to actually do footage and then to edit it. It does take a little bit longer than I was expecting. I want to make a fairly good job of it so I don't rush it. So it has been a little bit longer than I was expecting though. Anyway, let's get back on with the game. A few interesting developments. Now, a couple of things have happened which are quite amusing really, and it's turned the game around quite a bit. Let me explain. I don't know whether you remember, but when we left the game last time, it was the Americans' turn and they had this forward boys card to play, which they had to play because they had no command chips left. So all that happened then was that the officer over here just reloaded this unit. The Prussian officer here reloaded this one as well. And this unit, which is elite, could also do something, and that reloaded. Now you're wondering why it's back there. I'll come to that in a minute. So that was the first move. The next thing that happened was because that was the last American card, I reshuffled a pack, dealt out 3 new cards, and blow me, the next card that came out was that, which meant we had to do another random event. Well, I threw the dice, and what happened was we got this one here. Latecomers arrive on the battlefield. Let me read that out. The players who has lost the most figures since the start of the game puts together a legal unit of up to 8 figures from their casualties, which is the Americans, because the Americans had lost 9 figures up until this point. The British have only lost 4. Their opponent then places a deployment marker in contact with the board edge more than 8 inches away from any enemy figures if possible. Well, the British decided they would just leave, activate that sort of point over there. I could put another marker down, but there's a knotty point, so that's what they put down. And then the unit deploys normally around this deployment point and counts as a unit from the owner's force. So that means that as the American losses were 2 Continentals and 2 single skirmishers, but 5 cavalry, they brought on some reinforcements. They get 5 extra cavalry. So that was a bit of luck on the American side there. Just another completely random event, but it turned out to be quite an important one because now we've suddenly got another unit on the table. Then it was the British turn again. Now the British cards they had to choose from were those 2 cards there, irregulars and regulars, and then he had this blue artillery card. Now, as I'm playing both sides, I'm trying to decide what's best for each side when it's their turn. And the British decided that rather than use one of these cards, I tried to be a bit clever here, but you'll see in a minute it didn't pay off. What I decided to do was to let the Americans fire their artillery piece. So I actually used this card. The reason I did that was because the Americans' artillery piece here is actually blocked. It can't fire anyway. In fact, it was here. That's where it was. And as it can't fire, I thought, well, I'll do something canny here. I'll use that card, get a command point for doing that, and they won't be able to fire anyway. So that is absolutely true. There was nothing else they can actually hit. But so what the Americans did was they've just moved the artillery slightly to the right 2 inches. You can manhandle the artillery piece 2 inches, which would mean that eventually if these move over here down a bit, the artillery would be able to fire through that gap. So that's all well and good. But then it was the Americans' turn. And then the Americans decided to use one of their provincial cards, which means that this unit here, which was unloaded and in formation, could fire on the British Grenadiers that were in fact here. And they did fire, volley fire, and very effective it was too, because the British lost 3 figures. And they had to do a reaction test to that, and they fell back. They had the fall back or shaken result, so I decided to let them fall back a little bit. So that really didn't work. The British shouldn't have let them fire. What they should have done, the British should have used their regulars card, which they had on the table, and they could have opened fire with these guys to try and push these back or do some damage to them, and didn't. So basically that backfired spectacularly for the British. And at the moment I would say that those first few things that have changed the game quite a bit, because they got some reinforcements coming on over there, and they pushed the Grenadiers back, having taken out 3 figures. So the Americans are quite happy at the moment. So now it's the British turn again. They've got irregulars and the regulars card. So the British are now going to use the regulars card and move all their regular forces, which I'll do now. Now, the Brunswickers here actually are not within 16 inches. Well, in fact, if you measure very carefully, this front figure is here, and possibly that second one, but the rest of them are not. So if they fired volley fire, they'd only be actually hitting 2 figures. So they're just going to do a normal fire, I think. They don't have to fire volley fire, you see. They can just do a normal musketry fire. And both ranks from this unit will now fire at these over here. It normally hits on 6, but it's firing at a close formation, or a unit formed up in close formation. So it's hitting now on 5s. But because it's long range and it's raining, so it's -2 for long range, -1 for the rain. So they're now hitting on 8s. So it's 8s and 9s to hit with 10 figures. Let's see how we get on. 8s and 9s I'm looking for. There's 1 9 there, there's a 9 there, so that's 2. Roll again. There's another 9 there, and that's it. So that's 3 hits. Now over half range, their strength for a musket is 6+. So they need to hit 6+ for those 3 to actually to take a man off. Well, there's only 1 there, there's an 8, that's a 4, and that's a 0. So they have actually managed to take off a casualty, which means now that this unit will have to do a reaction test. My dice rolling for reaction tests are abysmal. I'm sure you've noticed that, and certainly my mates down the club will be laughing again, because I am notorious for this. People like to play me purely because I roll rubbish dice all the time. Anyway, that's a 1, and that is not going to be good, is it, really? However, let's see what happens. So the modifiers, the unit obviously have an officer, so it now goes up to 2, and it's at least 6 figures, so it goes up to 3. The unit is formed up, this is going to help a lot, so it goes up to 5. Right, let's see if there's any other bits. Now it's on 5. Now it's get a -1. The test is due to artillery fire or fire from a formed unit in close order, which it is. It's not getting the volley fire bonus, but it's a minus for being in a formed unit. So it's now 4. And if you look at this, 4 going along here is recoil and shaken, because it's a recruit unit. So they have to recoil. Let's move those cards out of the way. You've got to recoil 4 inches. and they get a shaken marker. There we go. So that sort of worked quite well for the Brunswickers. The next unit to fire will be these Grenadiers. They're going to fire into these Minutemen that are in that rocky ground. I think they are the biggest threat. So we've got 5 Grenadiers. They hit on 6s as well. There's no deductions for range, but they do get pretty good cover being in that rocky ground, because rocky ground counts as, yeah, solid cover, and solid cover gives them -4 on for shooting. You take 4 off, so although they're hitting on 6s, it now becomes 10s, which is pretty hard. Now you can't roll a 10, you can only roll a 9, but that makes it what they call an impossible shot. But we'll try anyway. We're looking for 9s. No, not a single hit, so that was a bit of a waste of time. Now I'm going to remember to put a bit of smoke down for these units, which I keep forgetting, and which I keep forgetting to do, but they've opened fire. Right, now over here, swinging round, these chaps are just going to reload. The light infantry will fire across into the American skirmishers in the wood. Let's see what the range is. Right, they're all within 12 inches, so there's no deductions for that. However, they are in the riflemen are in dense cover, so they do get 2 for that. The light infantry hit on 6s, and that becomes 8s now because of the cover. So we're looking for 6 dice, rolling 8s for a hit. So we're looking for, remember, 8s to hit. There's an 8 there, so it's just 1 hit. And at close range, the musket has got a strength of 4. Yeah, so they take 1 casualty off, and that unit has to do a reaction test as well. 3. It's better than a 0 or a 1, but not much better, is it really? Right, so let's just do this test quickly. The unit has an officer nearby, which it does, so it's now on 4. So it's 4. It's not too bad, but even so, they're skirmishers. So looking at the table here, 4 for skirmishers. Oops, can't see that, can you? Sorry. So 4 for skirmishers. It's recoil and shaken again. If only I rolled decent morale dice, but I don't. So they have to recoil, and in that wood they can recoil 4 inches, because that's their normal move anyway. So they've gone back and they are shaken. Right, the only other unit that I could move would be the cavalry here. And I think what we're going to do with them is we're just going to move them around here, facing where they think there might be a threat coming through. They're not going to do anything more at the moment. And now it's the American turn. And they have 2 irregular cards. So guess what they're going to do? Yeah, they're going to move their irregulars, which are the skirmishers and the Minutemen. Oh, before I forget, I ordered something on Amazon because the cards that are in the game, I think they're okay, to be honest. They're, but some people think they're a little bit flimsy. I don't think they're too bad myself, but they might start to wear. So I ordered these little pouches to put them in. I actually ordered green. Possibly black might have been a better colour. I thought it might be a slightly darker green and they wouldn't notice so much on the battlefield. But anyway, that's what I got. But they're really nice. They're from this company. They're called Dragon Shield. They're ones that were recommended to me by a friend. He said they're brilliant, and they are. You get 100 in there, so it's enough to do. Well, I've only used half of them, so what I might do is I'll let a mate of mine have the other half. They got a nice sort of matte finish. They shuffle well, and I think they're quite nice, aren't they? So I just thought I'd mention that in case you're interested. If people think that the cards aren't maybe as robust as they think they ought to be, you can always put them in those little shields, which I think look very, very nice. Now it's the British go. They're going to be using their irregular card. There we are. And the only irregulars they've got is Butler's Rangers. So they're going to shoot over here. They are within 12 inches. I know that because I measured before. They've got 4 men shooting. They normally hit on 5s. They do re-roll 0s if they get a 0 because they're sharpshooters. But the target is in a wood, so it's dense cover, so they're hitting on 7s. Let's see what happens there. Only 1 hit. They are actually armed with a musket, not a rifle, Butler's Rangers. They are musket armed. And that is a musket ranger. Yeah, they're still hitting on. They've got a strength of 4. Let's see whether that one's a hit or not. No, it's not. It's a miss. So they didn't do anything there at all. And they're only a musket, so they only get the 1 fire marker, not 2, which rifles get. And now the British, if they run out of cards, take the 3 cards off the top, see what they got. Oh, and 2 red cards, 2 regulars, which is good, and an irregular blue card. So we'll put those down in the British section. And now it's the Americans' turn. Over here, what have they got? They've got irregulars again. Oh, that's going to be handy, isn't it? So, and they'll also get 3 new cards. I'll do that while I think of it. Top 3 off the pack are provincials and 2 red cards, irregulars and regulars. So not a brilliant 3 cards for the Americans. Right, so the irregulars are going to move. The guys over the far corner there, I'll just move those up in a minute. They're going to have to reload in the middle there. These are going to have to reload, and these guys will just move a little bit more. They could attempt. No, they're going to move more into that wood. I think they want to gain the benefit of being in that solid ground. And this officer will move over here. They've reloaded. They've reloaded. And over here, these guys are going to move up a little bit and get back into the action, hopefully. Right, so that's all done. Quite straightforward. Oh, this irregular guy can shoot. or do something, because he's armed with a rifle. So it's worth him having a pot shot at one of these ranger guys. Let's just roll a dice and see whether it's anything decent. Oh, it is decent. It's a 9. Well, I don't have to work that out. That is a hit. Let's see if it does any... it hits target. Oh, but it misses. Doesn't do any damage anyway. So, believe it or not, because you've got a rifle, he takes 2 fire markers, so he can't do much more now. Right, so that's the move. Next move is the British. So let's give you an update. A few things that's happened. First of all, the British have decided they're not going to hang about here. They're going to move forward. So you'll see what's happened here. The Grenadiers have moved up. They're still unloaded, but they've moved up because they want to try and move into this and take that position away. They feel that they're going to shooting into that is going to be a bit of a waste of time, so they're going to go into combat instead. The same goes for this unit here. They could have moved up, maybe got within volley fire, but they feel they've got more chance if they get stuck in with the bayonet. So that's what they're going to try and do. Can't do it this move. That's their maximum move they can do. In the woods, you can see the lights have moved up. They're very close to the American rifles now, who are also unloaded. And you'll see there the Butler's Rangers have charged the American officer. He could have tried to flee, but if you do that on a roll of 0, 1, 2 or 3, you're killed anyway. So he decided to fight bravely against 4 attackers, and we'll see what happens there in a minute. Elsewhere, the British cavalry have moved through to this gap to threaten the Continentals. What else has happened here? Now, these have moved across out of the way of the artillery in the hope that they can use that in a minute, and you see the Continental cavalry have moved up also into a position where they can support their colleagues on the left, on their left. Right, so the interesting thing is this little melee going on here between Butler's Rangers and the American officer. I think I know how to do this now. It's quite a straightforward fight. The British or the Butler's Rangers hit on 6s, and there's 4 of them counting in that melee. So let's do that first. They need 6s. 1 6 there and a 6 there. So that's 2 hits for them. Now let's see what the American saves on first. He saves on 5. Let's see if those 2 hits turn out to be. He saved 1, so he has. Unfortunately, he does die. That's a bit sad, isn't it? But he fights back first. He's only got 1 hit, which is on 5s. Yes, he did a hit on one of the Butler's Rangers, and their defence is 5 as well, 5 and over. No, they don't. So one of the Butler's Rangers die as well. But that offers us a sad loss to the American force. Yeah, if they get into combat, they are in trouble. Now there is something. I need to check the rules as to whether, if a unit's within 6 inches, whether he can, whether in fact he does die. Let me just check that. Now, it says here, sacrifice. If an officer should be removed as a casualty during a shooting attack, they can instead remove a single friendly figure of their troop type situated within 2 inches. Well, first of all, they're not within 2 inches, and secondly, it's not shooting, it's a melee. No, so I'm afraid an American officer is a casualty, and one of the Butler's Rangers are as well. But they won the melee. Now, do they have to do a test? I don't know. Shall we do one anyway, just to see what it's like? Oh dear, 1. Oh dear. My dice rolling is abysmal. However, I don't think they needed to have done that anyway. Let me just double check, because they did win the melee, although they lost 1 each. So you could argue that that's a draw. In which case, the defender would have to react first. Oh no, he doesn't have to test. He's not facing an enemy. sorry, the Butler's Rangers don't have to test because they're not facing an enemy. The single figure that was there is now dead. So in fact, they don't have to test, fortunately. So that terrible one that I just rolled doesn't count. So that was a very, very positive British move. They really decided they're not going to hang about. They're going to get stuck in. These damned rebels need a bit of need some bayonet. That's what they need. They don't like it up them. Who said that? Anyway, the British have decided to be very positive and move forward and push the Americans back using their bayonets. And that was quite a good move for them because they killed an American officer. And they're in a position now where the Minutemen, although they're in rocky ground, are looking decidedly shaky. But it's the Americans' go. However, the Americans have got no blue cards, and they also haven't got enough command points. So they've either got to let the British move their regulars or their irregulars. So what do you think they should do? Answers on a postcard too. The problem they've got is that I think they're going to have to let their irregulars move. There's only one irregular unit, which is the Butler's Rangers, and they are less of a threat than moving every single regular unit the British have, which are the remainder of their units. So that's what they're going to do, and of course they do get a command chip for that. And in the wood over here, Butler's Rangers, if they're within 4 inches of that unit, which they are, they're going to charge again. Okay, so the Butler's Rangers have now charged into the American Rifles skirmish unit. There's 3 attackers, there's 3 defenders, because anyone within 3 inches of the figures in combat can join in. So these 2 are definitely in, and that one's just out. So they've got 3 figures fighting back. So the Butler's Rangers aggression is 6 and defence is 5, and the Americans aggression is 7. Not as good. So the Butler's Rangers first. We're going to do 3 dice. We need 5s to hit. 3 hits. So the Americans have got a defence of 6. They need 6s or above to survive. And they didn't. Oh dear. So all 3 are dead. And then they fight back, of course, before they died. They're hitting on 6s. No, they're hitting on 7s. No hits at all. So the Butler's Rangers really did well there. There's only 1 figure left now out of that unit, and although it wasn't in combat, it must do a reaction test because there is 1 figure left. Let's see what it rolls. It rolled a 6, which is not too bad, but I don't think it's going to be enough somehow. So let's just have a look. And modifiers. There's no officer nearby of the troop type that he is, because he just died. The unit is comprised of there's not 6 figures there. It has there's a unit of 3 figures or less. So it rolled a 6, it's down to 3 already. It loses -3 for the figures they lost, so it's now on 0. It's not going to survive this, is it? So a 0 with a skirmish unit is flight. They have to flee. So they're not going to really do anything now, are they, to be honest? They're going to effectively be out of the game. So it's the British move. The British have only got 1 more card, and it's a blue one. There we go, the blue irregulars. So they'll get a command point for using that card. There we go, 1 command point. And the American irregulars can move, and they need to do something because they're in a bit of trouble here, I think now. The Americans are starting to panic a bit. the game has swung the other way. Right, I'll think about that and come back. Okay, a few developments. Firstly, over here, the American rifles opened fire on the Butler's Rangers that were in the wood here, and as you can see, they've gone. They suffered 2 casualties, and when they tested, the other figure routed. So the Butler's Rangers, although they did a good job, are no longer around. They've all gone. They're over here. Elsewhere, the Minutemen in here opened fire point blank range on the unit of British infantry, and they took 4 casualties, so pretty devastating fire there. Surprisingly, their morale test was fine. They rolled really high. Well, they rolled a 9, and because they've got an officer nearby, they survived, so they're still there. They are shaken, mind you. They did get a fallback or shaken marker, so I've given them the shaken marker in the hope that when they do test in a minute to see if they're okay, they can do a second reaction and then charge into these guys. There's only 4 of them, but hopefully they'll do the business. The militia, the other rifle-armed Minutemen fell back. They're a bit worried about these grenadiers, so they fell back in their move. They're still unloaded. And you'll notice the Continental Cavalry moved up. The Americans didn't want to use this card, which is not surprising really, the regulars British card, so they used their 2 command points to bring the cavalry that were here to block these Continentals that were threatening the infantry. So that's where we are now. However, it's the Americans' go again, and they have to now use that card because the British used their card, their irregular card. They haven't got any irregulars now left on the table, and they got a command point for doing that. So they swung it back to the Americans, and they have to now use the British regulars card. They will gain a command point for doing that, of course, but now it's all the British regulars to move. Right, let's do the easy bits first. The light infantry will reload. I think in here the grenadiers are going to keep moving forward. They can only move forward at 2 inches, but there's no point in them loading. They'd rather get stuck into these Minutemen eventually, so they're going to move up. The Continentals are going to charge into these guys in the hope that they can do something there. And now the other unit here, I've got to roll to see whether they pass their test. Let's just see what happens. 2. Oh well, I don't think that's going to happen, then, is it? They're no longer shaken, but they won't be able to actually charge as well, although I will just double check that. So they're on 2. They're a trained unit, they need 5 or over. There's an officer nearby, so they're on 3. They're no longer 6 figures, unfortunately. It's not formed up. No, it's on 3, so although it needs a 5 plus, that's their rally value is 5 plus, as you can see, but they're on 3. So they do rally still, but they cannot do a second activation, which is what I'm hoping they would be able to do, but they can't. So we have 1 melee to do, which is over here. Let's do that now. The British have got 4 attackers, so they roll 4 dice and they're hitting on 6s. They've only got 1 hit there, and it's 5s for the Americans to save. Yes, they did, so they've got no casualties. The Americans fight back with 5. They're hitting on 7s. 1 hit only. Is that a save? Yes, it is. So that's an absolute nothing happened there. The Americans must react first. They roll a 4. Let's just see what the British roll as well, just out of interest. 8. So the Americans rolled a 4. They get 1 for an officer within 6 inches, that's 5. And because they suffered no casualties, that's 7. But a 7 for a recruit unit is recoil or shaken. Well, they have to recoil. They have to recoil a full move. So they're going back 10 inches. So although they stopped that unit, the British don't have to do a test because they don't have an enemy in front of them. So that's where we ended. And in fact, the next card to come out, because the Americans haven't got any, is, well, the clock card. So that's the end of that session. All right. So I'll work everything out and we'll continue this game tomorrow. So it's all happened this move. The British are pushing forward, although they're losing quite a few men now. They've lost, what, 10, 16, 18 figures in all. The Americans have lost 15 figures, so the Americans are actually now slightly winning this, although they are being pushed back, and the British need to continue doing that if they're going to win, but they are taking casualties in the meantime. So we'll see you all. I'll see you all tomorrow when we do the last session.